big issue on a 12b6. There actually at the time was not a single case in the western United States, or the 2/3 of the western United States, that accepted a theory of an attempt to violate an internal control being a basis for a SOX claim. But we got by that. So here's what ultimately I found after a lot of fights. We actually got the internal controls produced, and this is what they were. And when we look at them, it became beautiful for this theory of, let's forget about this debate of who's right or wrong on the accounting question. Let's focus on the process of what's supposed to happen. And when we went to A6, one moment here. Let me find it up here. That's not it. Wait one moment, my apologies. Here we go. All right. So these documents show, you'll see on the left-hand column, risk type. The risk is senior level management may record incorrect or unsupported transactions in the financial statements resulting in personal gain. Put a bonus for yourself on the books without proper support. The control description on the three spots over, the corporate accounting department employees may create journal entries. The ability to post journal entries is limited to the director of corporate accounting, the vice president of corporate accounting and reporting, and the corporate controller. So I won't go through all these right now, but what they showed is there was a series of these controls that actually showed it is Cathy's job to make the entry. These other controls were the concept of what's called segregation of duties, or I said a separation of powers, which is it's Cathy's job and her role to decide what goes onto the books, and it's the CFO and CEO's responsibility to review and approve that. But they are created intentionally as a separation where the CFO and the CEO have no right to record something on the books. She has the ultimate right to say no. And they couldn't dispute this. Every one of their witnesses had to agree to this. I'll show you one more document, and it just I think illustrates you've got to find the rule. You've got to get the rule that is indisputable by the other side. And you've got to find the source of that rule. And here's another really good example. So we even found, let's see. One moment here. Okay, up here, top right. Segregating financial statement review approval from recording and approving. The CFO signs the quarterly financial statements filed with the SEC. The CEO, CFO, controllers, and president review the financials. Now here's the key. Neither the CFO nor the president have access to the financial systems and do not have the ability to make journal entries. They cannot make journal entries. So instead of fighting this losing battle of who was right or wrong, the case became, in our view, she has the right to say no. They don't have the right to make a journal entry. They can't do indirectly what they're not allowed to do directly. They were just end running the rule. Forcing her, bullying her into doing it was end running the rule. It's that simple. This was indisputable. Their documents showed it, and none of their witnesses were able to live with that. All right, so let me just let me go really quickly to so I'm gonna talk just for 2 seconds about kind of the witness. Where are we at? Let's see. So I'll talk a little bit. So we start off the trial. One second. I want to talk just for a few minutes about witness order, and then we'll move into sort of closing. And then if we have time at the end, I'll go through some kind of other key points. So witness order in employment cases to me is just the most critical thing of all. There's so many options, there's so many choices, and we have this real ability to sculpt the trial the way we want it to be. So in this case, I knew from the focus groups that the HR person, Ms. Briggs, was just not going to be received well. She wasn't a critical witness, frankly. She wasn't a termination decision maker. She wasn't actually involved in the bonus accrual issues. But she was involved in something that was really bad at the end, which is Cathy worked for 30 years for Playboy, and under the severance plan that existed when she started, that everybody agreed applied to Cathy, when she was terminated for no cause, a reduction in force, she was entitled to about $277,000 in severance, determined by her years of service. That was unconditional, it was owed automatically, and she didn't have to sign a release or do anything to get it. But when they ultimately got rid of her and told her that she was going to be terminated and she was going to be replaced by John McDonald, Packler said, guess what? I need Cathy to stay and train John McDonald and close out the books for 4 months. So they started conditioning her receipt of this absolutely entitled to severance on her staying. And Briggs was involved in that. So I called Briggs as the first witness because this was just a messed up thing. Was it like the real key of the case? No, but it was just something they couldn't live with. So Briggs was my first witness because it let me kind of do it. You know, I put the HR person on. I was able to tell the story of Cathy, good worker, spent a lot of years here. I was able to review all the whistleblower policies and why they're so important. I was able to then get to the fact that Cathy had been promoted to corporate controller the year before she was terminated. And then there was this flip-flop where a year later, she's gotten rid of, and then her replacement is the person that they decided not to promote to the corporate controller job the year before. And then I was able to slam her on this severance issue. And it was effective as can be because it was the most indefensible act of the defendant. So, you know, one fun part to me of employment trials is there's so many different events and facts we can focus on that when we find the right ones, you know, cases that are really tough can become really easy to win. And this was an example of that jury was so outraged at the outset at trying to deny her of her severance that she earned over 30 years that it got it going well. Then, from there, you know, I might show this. From there then, you know, normally I would go to like Packler, the bad guy, but I felt in this case I needed to build to him. He was smart. He was, you know, the kind of guy that frankly a lot of people liked. And he had some humanity to him, but he was really upset at Cathy over this. Long story short, after the case, we ended up getting we settled the case and got an invitation to the mansion for a party, my wife and I actually walked in the door and bumped into Packler. And I literally, I'm on the elevator with my wife and I'm saying, you know, this is awkward, but like the one person I just don't want to run into is Packler. We walk off, there he is, and there's his wife, and frankly, they were delightful people. He was a scary witness to handle, you know, in that sense. So I didn't want to go right to him. I also don't like my client testifying early. But Cathy was different. She could do it, okay? She was smart. She was, you know, I went to Cathy's depot. I prepped her for all this. Her depot, her 8-hour depot, you know, the defense lawyer pounding at her to, you know, 7 hours of that trying to get Cathy to agree that she was wrong on the accounting issue. And regardless of whether Cathy was right or wrong, she held her ground. And I knew that she would. But what we did do is there was one independent person. So after I put on Briggs, the HR person, I played, and I'll play maybe like 7-8 minutes of this video. There was one independent person in this case, and his name was Mr. Stipich. He was an external auditor of internal control issues for a company called Grant Thornton. Grant Thornton is this big company that is an outside auditor of a company's internal controls, and he worked with Cathy for years. And so let me just, and he was, you know, this is someone, I took his depot. I had not spoken to the man. He was aligned with them, but he was also, you know, just played it by the book type of person. So we were able to start off after Briggs and before Cathy was on to do some of the following. And it felt weird because the video wasn't great. Oh no, what are we doing? while you're working on, so basically, let me step in then. All right, so you see the guy. He's credible, right? He's not there to help me. He's just a straight by-the-book guy.
No.
The initial period in 2004, and then the annual update testing that took place every year until they went private.
Okay. So did you work
No. How about? Can you hear?
every year basis with Ms. Zulfer? Did you or your staff or your team work with Ms. Zulfer every year from 2004 until Playboy went private?
Yes?
And before Ms. Zulfer became Playboy's corporate controller in the time period where she was a divisional controller, what was your experience like working with her? And by that I mean, did she do the things that you needed her to do her job?
Yes?
And what was your general impression of Ms. Zulfer's abilities as a divisional controller when you worked with her?
She was a good controller.
Okay. Did you get along well with her?
Yes?
Did you see in her somebody who was willing to put the time in to do the job and get the work done?
Yes?
Did you see in Ms. Zulfer somebody who knew the accounting rules and was able to handle the technical aspects of the job well?
Yes?
Do you recall any discussion?
You know, it was weird to play this video. Like, you can see I'm taking this step. I'm trying to extract stuff out of this guy. I don't know what I'm going to get. But I also thought, it's totally clear this guy is an honest person just answering the questions. And substantively, what we get is she was good, and we'll get to, he recommended when, you know, the year before, August 2010, when they terminated the existing corporate controller, this man whose job it was to know who's good at the controller job recommended to these new managers, Flander and Packler, that they promote Cathy. So that validated her, obviously, off the bat. It was the most independent person, and I won't bore you with it, especially with the sound, but we then walked through all of the controls with him. And I walked through these controls on here. Let me see.
Somebody else can actually be a check and balance to make sure that any entry that's put onto the books is proper and belongs there.
Yes.
Take a look, if you would, at the second page of Exhibit 2, specifically the control number 3400E-2.
In the real trial, the controls on the screen also.
Okay. And the control description, do you see it says reserve and allowance calculation and review? Do you see that portion?
Yes?
All right. Now I want to focus on the second paragraph. Do you see it states, in addition, during the monthly close process, the corporate accounting department personnel and the corporate controller perform a review of the financial statements and supporting documentation to ensure that the appropriate accruals, reserves, and allowances have been made. You see that?
Yes?
All right. So was is part of this control 3400E-2, that it was the job of the corporate accounting department or the corporate controllers when they were doing the monthly close of the books to make sure that any accrual that had been made was supported by appropriate documentation?
Yes.
All right, sounds terrible, so I'm not going to, but you get the point. I mean, he just walked through and validated her. Now, then, after that, we had, so remember I told you there was a complaint that Cathy's lawyer in real time made, and they did a full investigation, and we got a investigation file of 165 pages of handwritten notes that were next to impossible to decipher, and that was like also a 50-page, narrative report, and of course it concluded Playboy did nothing wrong. The conclusions were not admitted at trial, but buried within the investigator notes were a couple of key things, and let me just give you the background on it so it makes sense when I get to this in the closing. the investigator went out and spoke to Cathy, to Packler, to Briggs, the HR person, and McDonald, Cathy's replacement. And Packler told the following story. I knew nothing about any issue with Cathy. I don't even remember any bonus issue. If I'd had one, it was a normal conversation. I'm sorry, he didn't say I don't remember any bonus issue. He said I had a normal conversation with her about a bonus. It was no big deal. It was like any day, She said no, that was fine. I went and got the board to approve it. That was it. Packler denied knowing that Cathy went to Shapiro to report the issue. Okay. Packler then said, I decided to get rid of Cathy in August when we outsourced our entertainment division to Manwin. Packler had his story down at the beginning. Briggs, on the other hand, the HR person, wasn't as good at keeping the story straight. And she gave some phenomenal little nuggets. And I'm not joking, these weren't in the typed up report because they were good for me, but they were in the 165 pages of handwritten notes. Briggs said things like, Packler said Cathy had a blocking mentality. Briggs said, Packler said about Cathy, here she goes again being difficult. And Briggs said the key thing of all, Packler decided to make a change with Cathy around the time of the Steve Smith bonus issue. Well, the Steve Smith bonus issue was February 15th, 1 month after the protected activity. So in opening, I told the jury based on that, you're going to see that Packler laid a plan. He laid in wait. He couldn't just terminate her. You can't fire a corporate controller on the spot. In fact, when he did terminate her in August, he forced her to stay there for 4 more months because he needed her for 4 more months. So when you're going to terminate somebody under these circumstances, you need to lay the plan and you need to find, the right time, which also dealt with that 7-month gap. All right, so in any event, after we got those statements out from the investigator, then we put Cathy on, and she did great. And the defense spent 3+ hours of their time, 10 hours, trying to attack her. We then went to Packler, and that was fun because now it was set up and he was destroyable. We called we called McDonald, Flanders, experts, closed the case out. All right, so let me turn to, give me a second just to make sure. Yeah, let me turn to closing. And what I'm going to do is, and again, feel free, I'm going to deliver segments of the closing, just in segments. And then we'll talk about them, and feel free to have questions as well. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to do this the right way. Oh, there we go. All right. Oh, how about that? Where do I got to point this guy? Different one. Thank you. Oh. Still not working. Let's see. I can do from here if need be. All right, if you get it working, let me know. No worries. All right, let's try again. Good morning, everybody. It's so nice to get the chance to speak to you again. I want to begin by Judge Reed O'Connell, Marna. Thank you for letting us spend this time in your second home. Members of the jury, I'm nervous today. This is an important day for Cathy Zulfer. And in the work that I do to get a chance to represent somebody like Cathy Zulfer, somebody that spent 30 years really dedicating everything she is to this company, somebody who was fired for simply doing her job. It's not every day you get to represent somebody like this, and it's nervous for me today. So if I stumble a little, please cut me some slack. As you know, I'm going to be repetitive, and there are going to be times where I'm saying things that you've already heard, and you're probably wanting me to sit down. But you're lucky because we are on a clock again today. So I ask you, hear me out, even if you've already heard it, because every time I talk to juries after cases, it's amazing how, we're all different. And sometimes, for one of you, I might say something the first time and you get it, and you don't need to hear it again. And then for another juror, they say, you know what, I didn't get it the first time. But after a couple of times, it really sank in. So please bear with me. I hope you realize, and I heard things in jury selection, that some of you have had really good experiences, and some of you had not so positive views of jury service. I hope this trial has shown you something different. I hope this trial has shown you the importance of a jury system and the importance of the system we in America have. Because only in our system, only with jurors like you, can somebody like Cathy Zulfer, one person, stand up to a company known throughout the world, a brand that is recognized anywhere in this world, a company with the resources, the team of lawyers, everything you've seen in this case. Because of you, because of our jury system, because of your service, Cathy's able to get an equal level playing field here. And I appreciate that, and she appreciates that. Clicker works? Let's see. Now do I know how to do it? There we go, all right. The founding fathers, when they created the jury system, they said that the jury system is the heart and the lungs of America. And I think it is. Abraham Lincoln, who actually was a trial lawyer before president, he once said that the greatest act of citizenship that a citizen can do is serve on a jury. And I believe that's true, and I thank you for being the heart and the lungs. Because today, in this case, in this courtroom in Los Angeles, you're going to decide. You're going to decide corporate ethics. You're going to decide what are the rules that companies, whether they're little company or a huge company known around the world like Playboy, what's the ethics? What's the standards? What are the rules going to be? Is it okay for the CFO to bully the accountant? Do we want strong accountants who will stand up and speak truth to power like they're supposed to do? Or do we want people like John McDonald, a yes man that will just go along to stay on the job? Your verdict's going to decide these things. The laws we are in here to enforce today are very important. In this just impressive courthouse, this federal courthouse, we are here today on a national case. This is not just a state case. This is a national case of national importance under a federal law. And this federal law we're here to talk about today, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it's as important as any federal corporate ethics law that there is. You see, what happened is back in 2002, at a time, frankly, where our country was able to come together politically and agree on something, both sides agreed we had a problem in America. Because back in 2000, back in 2001, back in the 90s, you could be an accountant in one state and you could blow the whistle on financial accounting issues and you could be fired for it. Some states didn't even protect this stuff. So the federal government said, we can't let this happen. We've got to pass a law, a federal law, that Every state, every public company in every state in America must follow. Now, let me digress for 2 seconds. So remember I told you I was not, and I'm out of role right now. Remember I told you I wasn't allowed to say anything about Enron. I wasn't allowed to say anything about shareholders. All I was allowed to say is people and businesses rely on the accuracy of financial statements. Well, I was allowed to put that up there, and everybody knew what that meant. And I also had some Republicans on the jury, and I was able to embrace Bush, so this was good. All right. So this case is about corporate ethics. It's about who do we want to be in charge of companies' books. Do we want somebody that's going to have the courage to speak truth to power? Or do we want someone who's going to cave to the pressure of the boss in charge? You know, you heard a lot about the internal accounting controls. And you saw Playboy's policies, their internal accounting controls. But what may not have been clear until now, these aren't just the rules of the company. The internal accounting controls are laws from the Securities and Exchange Commission. They are the laws that companies must follow. They are rules that are there to make sure that every corporation that's publicly traded in America has accurate financial and accounting rules, because people and businesses rely in important ways on the accuracy of those rules. This is one of the instructions, instruction I-1, that Judge Reed O'Connell will read to you after we're done today. And it shows the rules and regulations of the Securities and Exchange Commissions require public companies to devise and maintain a system of internal accounting controls. And those internal accounting controls are necessary to permit preparation of financial statements in accordance with GAAP, with generally accepted accounting principles. It's not just their rules, it's not just their policies, it's not just good business, it's the law. And these are important laws that our federal government decided were so important that a special law got put in place to protect people like Cathy that stood up, bless you, to protect the company from breaking these laws. The internal accounting rules are there to make sure that a company spends its money only in approved ways. Not just, I want my bonus, I'm going to get it. Not just Packler telling Cathy Flanders is going to have a meltdown if he doesn't get his bonus. These rules are there to protect the company, to make sure that whatever gets onto the books is supposed to be there and is supported properly. And again, why is this important? It's important because people and businesses rely on the accuracy of financial rules. Hopefully they'll see Wall Street in that bottom photo. Now, Cathy's job as a corporate controller, it's a unique job. You know, you might have thought, wow, she said no to her boss? She said no to the CFO? How's that not insubordinate? Seems insubordinate when you're saying no to the boss. Not in this job. Not when you're the corporate controller. That's what makes this job so unique. That's what makes this job so different than so many other jobs. And that's what makes this job so important. Because the corporate controller is the financial gatekeeper. They are the financial police officer. They are the person who has every right and responsibility, in fact, to take that lock around the financial records, close that lock, and not let anybody force an entry on the books that doesn't belong.